So in this video, we're going to have a look at the solutions for the fifth year Leaving Cert Ordinary Level Maths exam for summer. So question one here, so it's question one, is asking you to solve. So we're looking for a value, and it's saying that x is an element of R, where R, remember that R means our real numbers, and they are all our real numbers. So that's basically talking about all numbers except the complex numbers, okay? So real numbers include your rational numbers, which are your whole numbers like 2, 3, 4, fractions, -2/3. So rational means that they can be expressed as a fraction. And also your irrational numbers, like something like pi that goes on forever, that can't be represented as a fraction. So it's called an irrational number, but it's still within the real numbers. The only numbers that are not included within the real numbers or there are our complex numbers, which we'll cover in sixth year. Okay, so let's have a look at the question then. The question is asking me to solve for x. So I've got a bracket straight away. So my first thing here is I want to expand that bracket. So I'm going to jump in and just multiply in that 3. So we get, we get 3 by 2x, which gives me 6x. 3 by plus 4 gives me plus 12. That -5 is still just there on its own. That's all equal to 3. Okay, so the minute that I've distributed that into the 3 into the bracket, I've now got a temp marks for that. I've got 6 out of 15 here. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to transpose. And transpose is just a fancy word for x is to the left and numbers to the right. So we're going to say 6x is equal to 3 plus 5 minus 12. Bringing all of those numbers over the equal sign and then changing sign. Okay. Another way of thinking of that is that we take 12 from both sides and we add 5 from both sides to cancel out the numbers on the left hand side. But a lot of students just like to use that verbiage of the -5 goes over the equal sign and turns into a plus. Okay. 6x then is going to be equal to 3 plus 5 gives me 8, and 8 minus 12 gives me -4. And then in order to get that 6 on its own, I'm going to divide both sides by the 6. 6 into 6 goes once, so it just leaves me with an x, and that x is equal to -4/6, or you can simplify it if you want to -2/3. Okay, either of these are acceptable answers. Okay, the only reason that it wouldn't be an acceptable answer is if the question says above, maybe represent your answer in the simplest form. Okay, so just be aware of that. On to our second question here, part B. It's completely unrelated, still algebra, but not related to the top question. And basically it's asking you to graph a range, okay? So this range here, which if I read it out in English would be x is, and you have to look at the signs, so we know that the bottom sign is the equal to as well, okay? And then that arrow is the less than. So it is less than or equal to 2.8, okay? And now we're into looking at our number system. So here we've already talked about x as an element of R. We know that that's my real numbers, so it's including absolutely every single number. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to 2.8, and I might even write it in here, 2.8, to show the examiner that that's where I'm starting. And then this entire line is going to be shaded in, and I'm going to indicate there that that goes on forever. Everything past that -4, okay, going down to the left, that is going to be equal or part of our number set, okay? X is less than or equal to 2.8 here, so it's the same range, but now I'm looking at when x is z, and z are our integers, and our integers are our positive and negative whole numbers. So no fractions, no decimals, just our whole numbers. Okay, so it's going to be less than 2.8. So the first one is 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, so that's representing them. And it does go on again forever. So I might throw that arrow in to just to indicate to my examiner, I know that also -5, -6, -370, they are all also within the subset. Okay, and then the last one is that when we're looking at the natural numbers, n are natural numbers, and they are just our positive whole numbers. Okay, so there's only two positive numbers that are less than 2.8, and that is 2 and 1. 0 is not a natural number. Okay, and that is the first question done. Okay, so the top one there, worth 15 marks. The second part is worth 5 marks. Now on to the next part, and this is simultaneous equations. All right, so my first step in these simultaneous equations is I'm going to put the numbers on one side and the letters on the other side. Okay, so we're going to say x minus y is equal to minus 1, and then we're going to say 2x plus 4 is equal to 19. Okay, now my job here is I want to either get the y's or the x's to cancel out. So I can get rid of the x's or I can get rid of the y's. I'm straight away there looking at the y's, and I'm noticing that I have a minus y on the top and a plus 4y on the bottom, which means if I multiply the top line just by 4, then I would turn that minus y into a minus 4y and it would cancel off. Okay, now I could also try and get rid of the x's, and if I was to get rid of the x's, I'd have to multiply the top line by a minus 2. Okay, so minus 2, because if you just multiply by 2, they wouldn't cancel out, because it would be 2x and 2x, which gives you 4x. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the top line there by 4, so we get 4x minus 4y, and don't forget that you multiply the entire line, so it's minus 4 on the right hand side as well. And I'm not doing anything to my bottom line, so I'm just going to write it down again. And that's all equal to 19. Okay, then these 4y's are going to cancel out. So now I've got 4x and 2x, which gives me 6x. And that's all going to be equal to minus 4 and a plus 19 is going to give me 15. So I'm going to divide both sides now by the number in front of the x, which is 6. And 6 divided by 6 just gives me that 1x that I'm looking for. And that is equal to 15 over 6. Or I could simplify that down to help me out into 5 over 2. Okay, so now I have my x. X is equal to 5 over 2. Now I need to go and find my y. So I can pick either one of the fractions above, or one of the lines above. I'm going to take this line here, the top one, and I'm going to say that x minus y is equal to minus 1. Now I know that x is equal to 5 over 2. So I'm just going to sub in 5 over 2 everywhere I have x. So now it's 5 over 2 minus y is equal to minus 1. So minus y will be equal to minus 1 minus 5 over 2. I'll bring this up here. Minus y will be equal to minus 7 over 2. You can just throw it into your calculator. You can put them into decimals, whatever you like. And then that number in front of the y there is a minus 1. So I divide both sides by minus 1. Okay? Or an easier way of thinking about it is I can just change the signs. All right? So whichever way you want to think about it. So y will be 7 over 2. If minus y is minus 7 over 2, then y is just 7 over 2. Now, if you did the other equation, it would work out exactly the same. So let's have a look at that. So if I took 2x plus 4y is equal to 19, and I subbed in my 5 over 2, I would get this. So 2 by 5 over 2 just gives me 5, plus 4y is equal to 19. 4y then will be equal to 19 minus 5. So 4y will be equal to 14. And now I would divide both sides by 4. And that would give me y is equal to 14 over 4, which can also be written as 7 over 2. Okay? Because 2 goes into both of them. 2 goes into 14 7 times, and 2 goes into 4 2 times. So now I have my answer. Y is 7 over 2, and x is 5 over 2. So my solution, if I was to write it down as a point, is 5 over 2 and 7 over 2. Now this question isn't asking for a point of intersection. This is just asking to solve for x and y. So you've done it here, and you've even double checked your answer by showing that if I subbed it into the second equation, that you get full marks there, okay? Or that you get the same answer, I should say. So that question is worth 10 marks, okay? Now on to question 2. So all this one is doing, and look at the verbs that they're using. It wants you to expand and simplify, not solve. Because it's only asking you to expand and simplify, expand means get rid of the brackets, and simplify means put x's with x's, numbers with numbers, x squareds with x squareds. That's all it's asking you to do, okay? You can't solve because there's no equals. There's no equal sign. You cannot solve an equation for x, okay? So we're just expanding it. So my first step to get my 10 marks is I just write out what 2x minus 4 squared means, and it just means it's multiplied by itself, okay? So let's split that bracket. So the 2x is going to multiply by this entire bracket, okay? So 2x by that and 2x by that. So we get 2x multiplied by 2x minus 4, and then that minus 4 here is coming down, and it has to multiply into the bracket as well, okay? Now, some people like to do the first by first, first by second, second by first, second by second, and that's fine if you're comfortable with doing that. If you're not comfortable with doing that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just splitting up the bracket and multiplying it out like this. You're doing the exact same thing, you're just doing it in your head, in the first by first, second by second, second by first, second by second. Here you're writing it out. So we've got 4x squared, because we've got this by that, and then that by that. So 4x squared minus 8x. Then down here, we have that by that and that by that. So we get minus 8x again, plus 16. And then we have a minus 6 over here. So now we're putting like terms with like terms. So we only have 4x squared appears once. We've got two places where I have x's, here and here. So we got put them together. Minus 8x gives me minus 16x. And then let's look at our numbers. We have numbers here and here. So plus 16 minus 6 just gives me plus 10. And this is my answer. Okay, can't solve for x because I don't have an equal sign in the question. I've expanded it. This is the expansion. So that's the first part of the question they're asking me. And then that here is the simplify. So watch those question verbs when you're doing these questions. Okay. So the next one now, it is our solving a quadratic equation. Okay. So this quadratic equation, it's saying give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. The minute I see that, I'm thinking in my head that it's more than likely going to be the minus b formula, i.e. there's going to be no factors. So straight away, I'm jumping in and I'm going to write down my minus b formula. X is going to be equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and then I'm going to write down what a, b, and c are. So a is the number in front of the x squared, 9. B is the number in front of the x. C is the number on its own, which is your minus 5. And now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sub in each one of those, and I'm going to remember to put brackets around them when I sub them in, just in case there's any sticky signs. So minus bracket 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 by a, which is 9, and then by c, which is minus 5, all over 2 by 9. Now, by doing that there, I've already got high partial credit, so just by subbing in, this here is giving you 6 marks out of 10. Okay? So the importance of writing down those formulas and subbing in, showing that work to show your examiner you know what you're doing. Okay? So now we can simplify it a little bit. So we get minus 6 plus or minus the square root of, inside there, we're going to have 36 minus, minus 4 by 9 is going to give me minus 36. And then minus 36 by 5 is going to give me plus 180. That's all going to be over 18. Okay, now we can throw that into our calculator, but we have to split it up into our two values. So either x is equal to minus 6 plus the square root of, what would that be? 216 over 18, or as per the formula, x will be equal to minus 6 minus the square root of 216, and that's all over 18. So in that case then, your answers, first one is going to be x is equal to 0.48 when you plug it into your calculator, and down here we have x is equal to minus 1.15. And there's my two answers for that question. Remembering that when I have an x squared, I'm going to have two answers. Okay, now the answers might be the same, but I should be getting two answers. For question 3, we are looking at the line. Okay, so let's read the first part of the question there. It's saying a line passes through a line n, so they're naming the line n, they're just giving it a name, has 2 points, A and B. So it's a line segment that goes between the points A and the point B, and then points are minus 1, 2, and 0, minus 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to label them x1, y1, x2, y2, because I'm going to be using them at some stage. Okay. The next thing then is we want to write the equation of the line, n, and we want it in the form of y is equal to mx plus c. Okay, now let's just pop over here for a second, because there are two equation of the line formulas. We have this one, y is equal to mx plus c, and we use this when we know the slope and when we know the y-intercept. So basically where our line is going to cross the y-axis. Okay, now we don't necessarily know that here. I'm checking, do we? Oh, we actually do. So we can use either method. All right. The one that's most commonly used by students, however, is using this guy here, which is the y minus y1 is equal to m by x minus x1. Okay. So I'm going to do it using this one first because it's the more common of the two, and then I'll use this one second just to double check my answer. Okay. Now the first thing you'll notice here for both of these is that both of them require me to find the slope. Okay. So I have to find the slope. So I'm going to write down my formula for slope, which is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay. And I'm just going to sub into that. So the slope of AB, which I can write like that, is going to be equal to y2, which is minus 2, minus y1, which is 2, all over my x2, which is 0, minus 1. Okay, so the reason I'm putting everything that I sub in brackets is just in case that there's going to be a change of sign because of that minus. All right, you mightn't spot it if you don't put that brackets in. All right, so that gives me the slope of AB is equal to minus 2. Minus 2 is minus 4 on top, all over 0, and minus 1. So this minus 1 here is going to just become a plus 1. So it's 0 plus 1. So that's just minus 4 over 1, which just gives me minus 4. So that is my slope. So that's the number I'm going to be using for my slope here. So that's my first step done. Okay. My second step then is to go to my equation of the line formula. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to sub into it. Okay. So y minus y1 in this case is 2 is equal to minus 4 is my slope, and x minus, and then minus 1. Now, you would get the exact same answer here, guys, if you used the other point, okay, x2, y2. All right, so either of the points can be used. I've labeled A, x1, y1, so I'm just going to go with that, okay? So y minus 2 is going to be equal to minus 4 by x plus 1. And I'm going to bring that up here. So y minus 2 is equal to, we put that minus 4 into the bracket, so that's minus 4x minus 4. So y is equal to minus 4x minus 4 plus 2. So my y is equal to minus 4x minus 2. And that's in the form that the question asks for. So there's my answer there. Okay. Now I'm getting marks for subbing into my formulas, for finding the slope. So by writing down your formulas and putting information in, you're taking a step in the right direction. So you're getting those attempt marks. Okay. Now let's have a look over here. If we look at what, actually I won't do that in highlighter, I'll just do a normal pen. If we look at the points that were given, okay. Bear with me here now for a minute. And this is going to be quite rough. So we've got 1, 2, minus 1, minus 2, 1, 2, 3, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. So this is looking at the second way of doing it. Okay, so this is option 2. All right, now if I plotted them points, okay, now I might just notice this myself by looking at it, but if I was to plot A, I'm going out to minus 1 and up to 2. So there we go, there's the first point. That's A. And then if I was to plot the second point, I'm going out to 0 and down to minus 2. Okay, so this here, now we'll join them up, they'll be quite rough, but there we go. This here, this point B, is the y-intercept. It's where it crosses the y-axis. And if I have the y-intercept, which I do in this question, you won't always in the question, okay? That's why a lot of the time students will have to go for the y minus y1 is equal to m by x minus x1. But if you do have the y-intercept and you notice it, what you can do is you can substrate into the other formula, y is equal to mx plus c, okay? So y in this case is going to be equal to minus 4 by x plus, and my y-intercept is minus 2. It crosses the x-axis at minus 2, so y is equal to minus 4x, and plus and a minus gives you minus, and you still have your 2 there, so I still have the correct answer. Okay, now I will say option 2 requires you to spot something that not all students would spot straight away, so don't worry if you didn't think about doing it that way. It's completely fine to be doing it the y minus y1 is equal to m by x minus x1. It's the first way that it's worked out in the marking scheme as well, and that just kind of shows that it's the most common way that students would approach it. Okay, so on to our second question, and we are looking at a line here. So again, this is the line, excuse me, and a point P, which is down here. Okay, so that point down there is 6 minus 3. So I'm just going to label it. I have a point there, so I'm going to call that x1, y1. Okay, and it says that we need to find the equation of the line that goes through point P that is perpendicular, okay, to line L. So if two lines are perpendicular, so if L is perpendicular to K, is that what they call it above? Yeah. So if L is perpendicular to K, then the slope of L multiplied by the slope of K is going to give me minus 1, okay? So my first job is to find out what is the slope of L. So I'm going to write down the line. 3x minus 4y is equal to 5, okay? And I remember that y is equal to mx plus c. And if I write something in that form, y is equal to mx plus c, I'm getting all this from my log tables now. I don't have to know any of this off the top of my head. If I can write it in that form, all I need to do is look at the number here in front of the x, and I'll be able to figure out what the slope is. So my first job here is to get y on its own, okay? So we've got minus 4y is equal to minus 3x. Actually, is that a minus or a plus? It is a minus, yeah. So I bring the 3x over and it becomes minus 3x is still added to 5. We still have that 5 on the other side, okay? Now I want to get y on its own, so I have to divide everything by minus 4. And then we simplify. So we just have a y here. Minus 3 divided by minus 4 is 3 over 4. And we still have our x here, okay? And then 5 divided by minus 4 is minus 5 over 4. So this here is my slope. So the slope of L is equal to 3 over 4. Now there's other things that I can tell from this line. I can tell that that line is going to cross the y-axis at minus 5 over 4. And if I have a quick look at the diagram, or the graph, you can see that it does roughly cross it around there. Now, that's not asking the question, but it's just a little bit of extra, okay? So, if the slope of L by K multiply together to give you -1, then all I need to do to get the slope of the other one is turn it upside down and change the sign. So it's going to be -4/3, because 3/4 multiplied by -4/3 gives me -12/12, which is -1. So the trick there is perpendicular slopes are inverted and change the sign. Okay, so you flip it and change the sign. Flip the fraction, flip the sign. All right. Now, the only place where you might get stuck is, what if the slope of a line, AB, for example, is -4, like we had in the top question? Then the perpendicular slope will be, you flip it. So remember, -4 is -4/1. So a perpendicular slope will be 1/4, and it's a minus, so I just change it to a plus. Okay, now that's just a little bit extra in case it comes up in another question. Now, I have my slope, I have my point, x1, y1, and I just sub in. So we got our y minus y1 is equal to m by x minus x1. And I'm subbing into my y1 and x1. So it's going to be y minus -3 equals -4/3 by x minus 6. Okay, so that is y plus 3 is equal to -4/3 by x minus 6. Now, don't like the look of that fraction, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 3. Okay, this whole line by 3, so this side gets multiplied by 3, and this side gets multiplied by 3, and here the 3's cancel out, so 3 divided by 3 is going to be 1, so I'm just left with 3 by y plus 3 is equal to -4 by x minus 6. So that's nice and tidy now, no fractions. Okay, multiply it out. 3y plus 9 is equal to -4x, and that is plus 24. And when we bring everything over to the left-hand side, because it's looking for it now in the form of ax plus by plus c is equal to 0, so we have to have a 0 on one side, and we just bring over the -4x to become 4x, plus your 3y plus 9 minus 24 is equal to 0, and then we just simplify that. 4x plus 3y, and then 9 minus 24 is going to give me minus 16, minus 15. And that is my answer there. Okay. So a couple of steps for that one, but again, remembering that just getting the slope is getting you 10 marks, subbing your point into your line equation of a line formula is getting you 10 marks, so make sure you're not leaving any of these blank. Okay. Next one is we are looking at the point of intersection of two lines. The point of intersection of two lines, lads, is just another way of asking you simultaneous equations. Okay. So there's no drawing lines, there's no looking at, you can do it by drawing the lines if you want to draw the lines out, you can absolutely do that. But the quickest way often to do it is you solve it by simultaneous equations. So I write down both my lines. 2x minus y is equal to 10. Okay, so here now, I have to either cancel out my x's or cancel out my y's. All right, I'm going to go with y's here because I can get the bottom line to 4 by just multiplying by 4, but if I only multiply by 4, then I have a -4 on the bottom, and I need a +4 on the bottom. So I have to multiply that bottom line by -4 to get it to change the sign as well. So top sign stays the exact same, or top line I should say, stays the exact same. And the bottom line then, I multiply the entire thing by -4, so I get -8y plus 4y now, because a -4 by a -y gives you +y, and that's all equal to -40. Now be careful there that you multiply both sides of the line by that -4. My y's are gone, and now I have 3x minus 8x, which gives me -5x, and that's all equal to 5 minus 40, which gives me -35. I want to get that x on its own. I divide both sides by -5. gone, and gone. So my x here is equal to minus 35 divided by minus 5 is 7. A minus divided by a minus gives you a plus, and then 35 divided by 5 gives me 7. Now I'm not finished. I have to sub in and I have to figure out what my y value is going to be. So let's look at the top one. 3, if x is equal to 7, then 3x minus 4y is equal to 5. I just sub in the 7 everywhere I have an x. So 3 by 7 is 21, minus 4y is equal to 5, minus 4y then is going to be equal to 5 minus 21. So minus 4y is going to be equal to minus 16, and I divide both sides by my minus 4. Minus 4 divided by minus 4 just gives me that y, and minus 16 divided by minus 4 is plus 4. So now I have my two answers. But look what the question is asking. It's asking for a point of intersection. So I have to draw it in point form or write it down in point form. And that comes in the form of xy. So that means that my answer is just 7, 4. So what this literally means is that I have two lines like this. One is L and one is K. And I figured out that the two of them cross at that point there, 7, 4. Right, so this question here, we are looking at the trapezoidal rule. Okay, so remember our trapezoidal rule, and it says it here in the question, is that the area of this shape is going to be equal to h over 2 by the first plus the last plus 2 times the rest added together. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out what h is, what the first is, what the last is. Okay, so h in this case, h is the interval in between the two of them, so we know that that's going to be 3 meters. And then our first is 4, and our last is 8. So here's my first 4, and this here is my last 8. Okay, so I just sub into my formula then. So we're saying that the area of this is going to be equal to, I might actually move this down here because I'll need a little bit of space. So the area of this shape is going to be equal to 3 over 2 by the first 4 plus 8 plus 2 times, then all the rest of them added together. So that's 5.8 plus 7 plus 6.5 plus 6 plus 4.8 plus 6 plus 6.5. And then I just plug that into my calculator. And when I plug that into my calculator, I'm going to get that the area is equal to 145.8 meters cubed. Sorry, that's centimeters cubed. And not cubed, squared. We're looking at area. Apologies. Okay. Now, down below here, we have another question, slightly related, but not completely related. It says the area of the same field, so we're looking at the same field, was re-estimated by doing the trapezoidal rule again, but they're going to do a different section width. So that means that my h here now, in this case, is 4. Okay. My first is still 4. My last is still 8. But the inside ones now are going to change. And you'll notice here that we don't know what one of the inside ones is, but they tell me that it's the same field, which means that it's the same area. Okay? Yeah, same area. Now, or similar area. You'll notice there that that's slightly different. Okay? And the reason it's slightly different is that we get more accurate the smaller our intervals are going to be, or the more of the intervals that are there. Okay? So you can see on the top one, there are many more intervals, which will mean that the area is much more accurate. Because there's fewer intervals or fewer bars on the second question, it means that the answer is going to be slightly off from the real thing. Now remember, the top one up here is still slightly off from the real thing, okay? But it's just a closer representation of the actual area. But we're going to use this area that they found down here to figure out what the height of x is, okay? Now, I know that my area, or just I'll write down A to give you space, is going to be equal to h over 2 by the first plus the last plus 2 times the rest added. But I also know that that's all equal to 145.6. Okay, so now I can make an equation with x in it so that I can solve x. So I can just say 4 over 2 by 4 plus 8 plus, and then I just add the rest of them together. So 6.4 plus 6.9 plus 6 plus x plus 6.2, and then 8 is my last, so that doesn't go into that bracket. And we know that that's all equal to 145.6. All right, so this here, 4 divided by 2, just gives me 2. 4 plus 8 gives me 12. And remember, that's outside the bracket, it's not into the bracket at all. And then, sorry, there should be a 2 here, apologies. Plus 2 times, and then I add the rest of those together inside there. So that's 6.4 plus 6.9 plus 6 plus 6.2. And if I add all those together, I'm going to get 25.5, and I still have that x. And that's all equal to 145.6. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the inside of that bracket sorted. So 2 by 25.5 gives me 51 plus 2x is all equal to 145.6. And then I'm just going to simplify the inside. So 12 plus 51 is going to give me 63. Still have that 2x there. That's all equal to 145.6. And then I bring that final 2 in. So 2 by 63 gives me 126 plus 4x is equal to 145.6. And then when I bring that 126 over, it's 145.6 minus 126. And that gives me 4x is equal to 19.6. And then I just divide both sides by that 4. So the 4 divided by 4 gives me 1. And x is going to be equal to 4.9. And then it's going to be meters. Okay, and there's my answer. Again, put a box around your answer, highlight your answer, so that your examiner, actually box around your answer, don't highlight it just in case the scanner picks it up, or doesn't pick it up, I should say. So that is what we're looking for that question, and that's your trapezoidal rule. Okay, the first one is just a basic application of it, and the second part there is using a little bit of algebra thrown in. Again, this is a 15-mark question for part B. Okay, so it's a 15-mark question here for part B, but if you get as far as here, you're getting 10 marks. Okay, and if you get just to here, you're getting 7 out of 15. Okay, so again, writing down your formula, subbing incorrectly is going to get all of those attempt marks for you. All right. So question 5 now, we're going on to a bit of probability. So Ronan is playing some basketball, and during a match, Ronan takes a number of free throws, and he scores 70% of his free throws on average. So probability, I like to put it in fractions. So the probability that he scores is 7 over 10, and then obviously the probability that he misses is going to be 3 over 10, because there's only 2 options when you take a free throw. You either score it or you miss it. Okay, and the probabilities have to add up to 1. Okay, so he said, or the question says, assume that scoring free throws are independent events, and that just means that they don't affect each other. Okay, that whether or not you miss the first one or the second one won't affect the third one. Okay, and it asks you to find the probability that he scores his first 3 free throws. So what's the probability that he scores and scores and scores? Okay, now remember, when we're looking at our probability, and means multiply. Okay, so what we're actually looking at there is we're looking at 7 over 10 by 7 over 10 by 7 over 10. And that is going to give me 343 over 1,000, or if you want to write it as a percentage, 34.3%. Okay. Now the second one It says find the probability that he scores exactly 2 of his first free throws. Okay, so exactly 2. Now it doesn't say that what order they have to be in, so we need to look at the possibilities. What are the different arrangements that could occur here? Okay, so he could score, score, miss. He could miss, score, score, or he could score, miss, score. Okay, so we're going to find out the probabilities of each of these, and remember that in between them, he could do this, or that, or the other. Okay, so on the top, we have 7 over 10 by 7 over 10 by 3 over 10. Here, we have 3 over 10 by 7 over 10 by 7 over 10. And here we have 7 over 10 by 3 over 10 by 7 over 10. Now, all three of these lads are going to give me the exact same answer. Okay, so I'm going to get 0.147 or 147 over 1,000. Okay. Zero point 0.147, 0.147. Okay, so we have OR over here, and we remember that in probability, OR means add. And we just add them all together, and we get 0.441. Or if you were doing it in fractions, again, that's 147 over 1,000, 147 over 1,000, and 147 over 1,000 added together gives you 441 over 1,000. And if you wanted to write it as a percentage, you could also write it as a percentage there. And that would give you 44.1%. Okay. So it's important there that you remember that there are 3 different arrangements. Okay. That he can score, score, miss, that he can miss, score, score, or he can score, miss, score. Okay. Now, the last question is give one reason why scoring his free throws might not be independent events. And we know as ourselves from playing sports or from playing any kind of game or doing any activity that your previous performance affects your current performance. So if I miss and I miss, then that might affect my ability to score for the third time because in my head I'm already going, well, I've missed twice. So a simple answer for this is that previous performance may affect the next shot or the future performance. Performance. Okay. And that is our probability question done there. Remembering some of the important things here, and is multiply, or means add. And don't forget to remember arrangements or permutations. Okay. Now, the part B of this, okay, is the table shows the number of games in which Ronan scored each of the giving number of points. Okay. So in 4 games, he scored 0 points. In 5 games, he scored 6 points, and so on. Okay, and it's asking you to find out the mean number of points. Okay, the mean number of points. Now, a very common mistake here will be to add up the top and the bottom, okay, and divide by each other. All right, but remember what that actually means on the top. So to get the mean, you add up all of the numbers of points and you divide by the number of games. But look at what's actually happening here. He's scoring 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 in 4 games. Then 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 in 5 games. So each one of these is a game, all right? So we have to take account for all of those games. So the easier way to do this, if we're looking at a question like this, okay, a frequency distribution table, this is called, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go, well, 4 multiplied by 0 plus our 5 by 6 plus our 4 by 8 plus 2 by 10 plus 3 by 12 plus 1 by 16. And now that's all divided by the number of games. And the number of games in this is 4 plus 5 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1, which is 19. Okay, so I'm adding all of the games on the bottom. Okay, so remembering, if I was to put these out in a single line, it would be, he did 0 points, 0 points, 0 points, 0 points. He did 5 points, 5 points, or sorry, 6 points. 6 points, 6 points, 6 points, 6 points. He did number of games 4, 8, 8, 8, 8. He did 10 and 10, 12, 12, 12, and one game he scored 16 points. So if I wanted to, yes, I could go and add all of those numbers together and divide by the number of games. But a quicker way of doing that is just going 4 by 0. Okay? So just be careful of the frequency distribution tables because they can be quite difficult to, or it can be quite difficult to remember and not go into autopilot and just add them all up together. Okay? So we have got then on top 134 all over 19, which gives me in and around 7.05263. And then it wants it to give it to me in 2 decimal places. So I round to 2 decimal places. So the mean in this case is going to be 7.05. And put in the unit, points scored. Okay. Okay, so question 6 here now. We're looking at a bit of area and volume, and it's saying a square sheet of cardboard of side units 10. Okay, so we've got side units of 10, just meaning that it looks like this. It's square, so we know that this is also 10. Okay, is used to make an open box that we see there. The squares of side units x, so because they're squares, we know that that's x as well. So these are all x2. Okay, were removed and it was folded along the dotted lines to make that open box. Okay, so the first thing we need to look at is we need to look at what is the height of the box going to be, what is the length of the box going to be, and what's the base of the box going to be. So this height one here is the easiest one, because if you look here, the height is going to be this. Okay, so once we fold along the dotted lines and we bring those flaps in, the height of the box is going to be whatever this is, and we know that that is x. So the height is just x. All right. Now for the length, if we look here, this here is going to be the length. All right. So this is going to be the length of the box. And if we are taking away an x and an x, what we're left with is 10 minus 1x minus another x, which gives me 10 minus 2x. For the base, it's 10 minus 2x. Sorry, that's the length. And it doesn't really matter because it's a square. The other side is also, for the same reasons, going to be 10 minus 2x. So I have my 10 here. So that is 10, and I'm taking away 2 x's from it. So I'm getting that 10 minus 2x. All right. So there is my dimensions of my box. Okay. Now, the next thing they're asking is to, and this looks like it could be a really difficult question. All right. But just remember, volume is equal to length by width by height. Okay. That's all we have to remember. And in this case, it will be if we use the letters that they're using, it's length by base by height, okay, which is the same thing. So all I need to do is just sub in what I have for my length, my base, and my height. So that's 10 minus 2x by 10 minus 2x, and that's all multiplied by x as well, okay? So my first job here is I'm going to actually multiply out this here first, okay? And then I'll multiply in the x at the end, all right? So if we multiply that out, we're going first by first, first by second, second by first, second by second, or you can split the bracket if you want, okay? So I know that it all has to be multiplied by x at the end. So 10 by 10 is 100. 10 by minus 2 is minus 20. Minus 2x by 10, sorry, that should be an x, is minus 20x as well. And minus 2x by minus 2x is plus 4x squared. Okay, so let's tidy up the inside. I'm going to put my x squareds first. So 4x squared minus 40x there. And then we have our plus 100. And that all has to be multiplied by x. And remember, that x is going to have to multiply by that, and by that, and by that there. Okay, so we get 4x cubed minus 40x squared plus 100x, and then that is my answer that they have in the question. Okay, so let's have a look here at explain why the height x, okay, why can the height not be 6, basically is what they're asking here. Okay, why can't it be 6? So let's look at what would happen if the height was 6. Well, then in that case, I would have 10 minus 2x is equal to my base. Okay, that's my base. And if the height was 6, okay, I would have 10 minus 2 by 6, and that would give me 10 minus 12, which would be minus 2 centimeters of a base. And the same for the length. And we can't have a negative, okay? So we can't have a negative, so anything anything greater than 5 is going to give us a negative answer, so we couldn't have that, all right? So that does not make sense. Negative width or base does not make sense, or can't occur, anything along those lines, okay? So that's that question. Again, a question that looks quite difficult and could have thrown a lot of students off, but if you just take your time and go step by step, you'd actually be able to do it in no time. Okay. Okay, so question 7 here. We are looking at an animal shelter that takes in cats and dogs. The staff recorded the weight of each animal in the shelter on 2 different days. So we've got day X, the beginning, and then a number of days later, day Y. Okay. The table shows the weights of 10 dogs, labeled A to J on these days, and it wants to draw a back-to-back stem and leaf plot to show this information. Okay, so day X is going in here. So let's start with day X. Now, the first thing I always do with a stem and leaf plot, lads, is I make sure that my values are in order. So have a quick look here, 4.5, 4.9, 5.3, they are all in ascending order, so that's fine. So now I can just go ahead and pop in my data. My key down here is telling me 6.0 is the same as having 6, 0. Okay, sorry, I should write equal to there. So 0 is equal to 6.0. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm just putting in the point after the decimal. All right, so it's, and this one, it's 5 and 9. For 5, you're going 3, 3, 5, 7. For our next one, it is 6.7 and 6.9. And the next one is 7.3 and 7.4. And we have no one in the 8s. All right, and the day Y then, we're going 8, 4, 5, 1. Oh, careful here now, because they're actually not in order for our second one. All right, because if you notice here, there's a 6.0. So we're going to go 0, 1, 3. 7s are 0 and 6, and then a 9, because this is the 9 here. And then we have the 8.1 here. Okay, And then this says, what does the stem and leaf plot show about the weights of the dogs? And it's just showing that the weight increases from day X to day Y. Day X to day Y. That's it. Okay. So if you look at them, each one of the dogs, okay, is after increasing in weight. Let's see if there's any dogs that aren't. Nope. So they're all after increasing in weight. All right. So weight increases from day X to day Y. The next one then it says, R is the correlation coefficient between the weight on day X and day Y. Based on the data and the table, pick the most likely. Okay, so it's our dogs are increasing in weight, which means that it has to be a positive number. And the closer that number is to 1, the closer the data is going to be together. So this here would be more than likely what our coefficient correlation or correlation coefficient or is going to be. And you give a number of reasons for that. You could say that it's a strong positive linear relationship. Okay, you could say if you graph them, the points would be closer together. Close together. So what I mean when I say when I'm graphing them, that they be close together, is that if I was to actually go and to graph this and look at day Y weight here and day X weight here, that all of the points would look something like that. Okay, that they would all be very close to a line, i.e. they wouldn't be. So if we were to look at something that kind of looked like a minus 0.2, that would look something maybe like this, where they're not necessarily as aligned, they're not as close together. Okay, so that is giving us the number that we're getting there. All right, now we will go through that again when we come back in August, so don't worry too much about it at the moment. Okay, right, the table below shows the breakdown of animals in the shelter by animal, okay, and by sex, male or female, on a particular day. All right, so let's just have a look at these. Male cats and dogs, that means there that we're going to have 16 of those. Oh, sorry, turn that down a bit. There we are. So we're going to have 16 males. If we have 16 males and a total of 40, that means that there has to be 24 total females. Okay. If we have 9 female cats, then in order to make that up, we have to have 15 female dogs, and then 11 and 15 is 26. Okay, so that was very well answered. Now, the next part of this question is asking us about the probabilities. Okay, so it's asking us to find the probability that the first animal picked. Okay, so let's read this question carefully. 3 different animals were picked at random. So we've got 3 different animals being picked at random. Okay, now find the probability that the first animal picked was a cat. Okay, so the first one picked is a cat. So we need to know what the probability that it's a cat is going to be. So let's have a look. How many cats were there? There are 14 cats, okay, and there are a total of 40 animals. So that means that the probability that it's a cat is going to be 14 over 40, which simplifies down to our 7 over 20, okay? Again, just throw 14 over 40 lines into your calculator and simplify it for you, or you can say to yourself 14 divided by 2 is 7, and then our 40 divided by 2 gives us that 20, okay? So the next one then says find the probability that 3 animals picked were male dogs, okay? So male dogs. So the first thing we have to do is we have to go and figure out, right, how many male dogs were there? There were 11. I'll do a different highlighter color for this. There were 11, and we're still looking at a total of 40, okay? So let's look at the first dog. the first dog, the probability that you get a male is going to be 11 over 40. Then, and the next dog is going to be 10 over 39. Why 10 over 39? Because why 10 first of all? Well, we had 11 and we've already picked one. Okay, so now we only have 10 dogs left. But because we've taken an animal out, there are only 39 animals left. And then we go for the third one, there are only nine male dogs left, and there are 38 total animals. So that gives me 100 and, sorry, it doesn't. That gives me, in my calculator, let's do this out now, 11 by 10 by 9. I should have been able to do that in my head. 990. Never a bad idea to check in your calculator. 10 by 39 by 38. That one I would not be so sure of in my head is 59280. And then that gives you a simplified, so by putting it into the calculator, 100, or not 133, just 33. Excuse me. 33 over 1976. Okay, 1976, which they're asking for decimal places is 0.0167. 3 decimal places then would be 0.017. And that is my probability that it is 3 male dogs in a row. Okay. The important thing there, lads, is remembering that as you remove a dog, you're not replacing it. Okay. That once you take the dog out of the cage or the pen that they're in, you're not putting them back in. All right. Now, 9 female cats were put in 9 separate pens. First thing I'm doing is I'm doing 9 separate pens. I'm going to represent them by these boxes. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Work out the number of ways in which this could have been done. That is the number of different possible arrangements. So we think to ourselves, right, well, how many cats can go in the first box? Sorry, we turn that down again. How many can go in the first box? Here, 9. I've used 1, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So there's 9 cats that can go in the first one, 8 that can go in the second one, 7 that can go in the third one, and so on. Okay? Now that's the same as just writing down 9 factorial. Okay? And if you put 9 factorial into your calculator, or if you multiply 9 by 8 by 7 by 6 by 5 by 4 by 3 by 2 by 1, you will get 362,880 different possible ways to do that. Okay? Which is a massive, massive number. So for part E, it is saying by the end of this week, 10 of the animals had left the shelter and no new animals had been added. So now our new total is 30. Okay, because we had 40, take 10, that's 30 animals at the end of the week. And they're telling me that the probability of a dog being picked, okay, is now 11 over 15. Okay, now that's very easy to put into over 30. I just multiply the fraction by 2. So that means that 22 out of 30, that's the exact same thing. And that's handy because I have the total on the bottom. So I know now, remember our probability is our successes over total. So that means that this here is the number of dogs. Okay, so that's the number of dogs. So that means that 8 cats remain this week, so that we have 8 cats, and then originally we had 14 cats. So if I have 14 cats minus 8, that means that 6 cats left. Okay, so 6 cats left. Okay, so question 8, we are back to area and volume. Okay, so the diagram below is that's the scale, and it shows a square with length 12. Okay, so we also know, we're going to put in all the information that we know that this here, this length is also 12. All right, that might help us later on. the next question, sorry, the next thing there is the circle C is inside the square and touches the four sides of the square, and the circle K is outside the square and goes through the four corners of the square. All right. Now, the first thing they're asking us to do is to find the radius of the circle. Well, if the sides are 12, then that means that this here is also 12. So the diameter is 12 centimeters. So the radius is going to be equal to 12 centimeters divided by 2. So the radius is 6 centimeters. Okay, so that's the first question done. The next question says work out the area of that circle. Okay, so the area of that circle, again, writing down our formula, area for circle equals pi r squared. So that is equal to pi by 6 squared, which is 36 pi. And if we write that as a decimal to two places, we are getting 113.10 centimeters squared. Okay, and that is our answer there. All right, this is the answer to the top part, sorry. Okay, so the next thing then is work out the percentage of the area of the square that is taken up by the circle C. So the first thing I'm doing, area of the square. Okay, so area of the square above there is just going to be 12 by 12. Okay, so the area of the square, area of square is 12 by 12. So that is 144 centimeters squared. And then they're looking for what percentage the circle takes up. So the area of the circle over the area of the square will give me that percentage if I multiply it by 100 over 1. So the area of the circle, we said above there, was 113.10 over 144 multiplied by 100, and that gives me 78.54%. And they want it to the nearest percent, so that is 79%. Okay. The next wants us to show that the radius of the circle K is this. Okay, so they want me to show that. All right. So next thing we do is we go back up to the diagram now and let's have a look at the radius of that circle K. Okay. So I'm looking to find the radius of circle K. And if you look here, if I draw a line between those two there, the diagonal that cuts the square, I'm after forming a lovely right angle triangle. Okay, where A is 12, sorry about that. If we go A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared, and remember that A is always the hypotenuse, okay, the longest side, hypotenuse, okay, that hypotenuse here is the diameter, okay, so the diameter squared is going to be equal to 12 squared plus 12 squared. All right, sorry, that squared should be outside the brackets. So making right angle triangles can be a really, really, really handy way to find out lengths, because you can use Pythagoras' theorem quite easily, okay, if you have two of the sides of that triangle, okay? So let's go down and finish that off down here. So we're saying that the diameter squared of circle K is going to be 12 squared plus 12 squared. So the diameter squared is going to be 144 plus 144. So the diameter squared is going to be equal to 288. I'm going to take the square root of both sides to get rid of that square on the left-hand side. So the diameter is equal to 16.9705. Okay, now that's the diameter. They're looking for the radius. So in order to get the radius, it's just going to be 16.9705 divided by 2. And that gives me 8.4853. And if I round that to 2 decimal places, that is 8.49 centimeters. Okay, so I'm using Pythagoras' theorem here. All right, and then that is my answer down here. Now they give me the answer, but they're asking me to prove that that is what it is, and I have. Okay, so next question then. They're asking for the circumference of the circle K. Okay, now you might get bogged down because you haven't been able to find the radius of K, but remember in the question above, they tell you that the radius is 8.49. Okay, so they're telling you that because if you don't get part D, then you can still work out part E. So the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. Okay, so that is 2 by pi by 8.49, and you just plug that into your calculator, and that gives you out 53.344, and to 2 decimal places, that is 53.34 centimeters. Okay, so again, it's one of those questions that when you look at it first, you can think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do that. But if you take it step by step and you remember your basics about radius, diameter, area, then you're very, very quickly going to be able to add up those attempt marks and even get full marks in a question like this. Okay. So next question then, nine. We are looking at our pie charts. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to figure out how many total students we have because I know that's going to be important. Okay. So there are 72 students in total. Okay. I'm looking at a pie chart and I remember that a pie chart is a circle. So I know that a circle has 360 degrees. Okay. And each one of these, the distinction, the higher merit, the merit, and the achieved is going to be some fraction of 360. What fraction is it going to be? It's going to be the fraction of students who got that over the number of students who took the test. So, for example, high merit for high merit, we are looking at 12 out of 72 students, and that is multiplied by 360. Okay, and that is going to give us 70, not 72%, no, 60%. Okay, let me just double check that in my calculator. So we've got 12 over 72 multiplied by 360, and that gives me out 60. For the merit, it's 39 over 72 multiplied by 360, and that is 195 degrees. And then the achieved, using the exact same method, it is 13 over 72, and you multiply that by 360, and that is going to give you 65 degrees. Okay, and then we've got our distinction there already. Distinction is done. So if I add all of those up, 40 plus 65 plus 60 plus 195, it should end up giving me that 360. And if it doesn't, we've gone wrong somewhere. Okay, so we then use our protractor. And I would say to you, lads, always focus, first of all, do the ones that are under 90 degrees first, or under 180 degrees first. And then that last one will just draw itself. Okay, so my higher merit, and this is going to be kind of rough now for me, but that might be about 60 degrees, I should say. And we're going to put higher merit in there. It's important to label it. And your achieved then, 65, around here. Again, I'm just doing it rough. It's quite hard to put a protractor on the glass of the iPad. And then this last bit that we have out here is our merit. And that is 195 degrees. Okay, and that's question done. 15 marks. Nice, easy 15 marks to get. Okay. Okay, so I have just added onto the page there a quick diagram of what the empirical rule actually means when we have our normal distribution. Okay, so we can see straight away that the question is mentioning that they're normally distributed. So if a data set is normally distributed, this is what it means. Okay, so we have the mean here down the middle. This will be the mean, all right? And on either side, one standard deviation, 68% of people will fall within that. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the question here. Let's look at it in context of the question. It tells us that the mean score is 100, so it goes in the middle, and then the standard deviation is 20. Okay, so if you look here at this question, if you go to the right, you're adding a standard deviation on each time, and if you go to the left, you're taking away a standard deviation each time. So here we will have 120, 140. Here we'd have 80, and here we will have 60, and we could go even one further out. Up here, you'd be looking at 160. Up here, or down here, I should say, you would be looking at 40. Okay, so you can see that the majority of the data lies in the middle, where the mean is, and as we go towards the edges, there are less people out that side. Okay, so what they want to look at here is they want to look at, right, well, what amount of people or what percentage of people lie between these two marks. So this here is -1 standard deviation. This here is +1 standard deviation. And if we look at the empirical rule over here, we can see that 68% of people lie within that area here. So these two here, from here to here, is 68% of people lie within that area here. So my answer is just 68%, and that's it. Okay. Now, they ask, the top 2.5 scores were given a grade of exceptional. Okay, so 2.5% of the scores were given exceptional. What was the least score needed to get that? Okay, so if we have a look again at the next, if we go to the next standard deviation, okay, which would be between here and here, okay, we have gone 60 up to 140, which is -2 standard deviations away and +2 standard deviations away. Okay, so within that, if you have a look here, we have 95% of the population. Okay, which means that there's 5% left. 2.5% are this side, and another 2.5% are this side. Okay, that's a 5. So if you're exceptional, you're obviously on the top side of things. So the top score, or the least, I suppose, the minimum score that you would need to get in order to be up here is above, well, it says the least score actually, so it's not above. The least score is 140. Okay, so it's 140 to get that exceptional. All right. Except the empirical rule, lads, really nice question when it comes up, as long as you know those numbers, 68, 95, and then 99.7 on the very outside. Okay. Now, scores of 6 people on a test were as follows. Find the range and the standard deviation. Okay. So the range is just the highest minus the lowest. So that is range. The highest of this is 113 minus 82, which gives me 31. So my range is 31. And then it's asking me to get the standard deviation. Now we can do standard deviation in the calculator. I'm going to put a separate video up for how you would do the standard deviation in the calculator. I will get tutorials from YouTube to put them up for the different calculators that I know are inside the class. All right. It's your responsibility to be able to do it if you're going to use your calculator, to know how to do it on your calculator, because there's so many different models. Obviously, I can try and help by putting up tutorials, but there'd be some calculators that I would even be a little bit unsure on doing. So I'm actually going to do it out by hand. I'm going to do the standard deviation by hand because it isn't that difficult if you know what you're doing. Okay. So your standard deviation, guys, you need to know your mean first of all. Okay. So the mean, which we can also just write down the formula for. So it's the sum of all of the numbers over the number of numbers. All right. So we're just going to add them all up, which would give me 104 plus 82 plus 94 plus 113 plus 98 plus 105 is going to give me 596, and that's all over 6 numbers. Okay, so that gives me a standard deviation of 93.3 recurring. So 3 goes on forever. All right. So to get my standard deviation, all right, my standard deviation, which comes with this symbol here, sigma, okay, we are looking at the formula all over n, and it's the sum of x minus the mean squared. All right, and all that means is that I'm just going to take the square root of, and I'm going to add the differences of the means together after I square them. And to square them just is because I want to keep them positive. So it's 104, which I'm getting from here, minus the mean, 93.3 recurring, squared. And then I'm going to add the next number, 82 minus 93.3 recurring squared. And I just keep doing that for all the numbers. 94 minus 93.3 squared. We keep on extending out our square root because it's going to be square root of all of those. So we've done 94, I'm on to 103, 113 I should say, sorry, minus 93.3 squared plus 98 minus 93.3 squared plus the last one then, which is 105 minus 93.3 recurring squared, and that's all divided by 6, the number of numbers that I have. Okay. And if you are doing that, okay, and you put that into your calculator, your standard deviation is going to come out at about 9.758, and they want it to one decimal place, so that is 9.8. Okay, so that is your standard deviation done. Okay, and this is the final question, and this is an area and volume question as well. Okay, so this question is saying that cones is a sculpture in the National Gallery of Australia, and it consists of 14 identical steel cones arranged into pairs. Okay, so we've got a cone on the top, and we have a cone on the bottom. Okay, and there are 14 of them. It's telling me that the height of each cone is equal to the diameter of its base. Okay, so the height of each cone is equal to the diameter of the base. If the radius of the base is 2.25, then write the height of the cone. So the height is twice the radius, so we know that the height is going to be 2 times 2.25. So my height is equal to 4.5 meters. Okay, so that's the height of each cone. All right. Show that correct to 2 decimal places the slant height of the cone. Okay, so the slant height of the cone is going to be 5.03. So let's draw a quick diagram. So if we have the cone that looks like this, we know that the radius here is 2.25. We know that the height is 4.5. Then we should be able to see that we're after making a lovely right angle triangle here, and the slant height is this thing out here that we don't know, so let's call that x. And because it's a right angle triangle, we can use Pythagoras' theorem. So I can just say that x squared is going to be equal to 4.5 squared plus 2.25 squared. So that gives me x squared is going to be equal to 25.3125. And then I take the square root of both sides to get x is equal to 5.03, and it's meters. Okay, so again, using Pythagoras' theorem, finding those right angle triangles where I can find them, because it's quite easy to work with Pythagoras' theorem to find lengths. Okay, so we're always kind of looking for those right angle triangles. So the next thing says, in order to maintain the steel's reflective shine, the surface is polished regularly. Find the curved surface area of a cone. So your curved surface area of a cone from our log tables, so curved surface area is going to be equal to pi or L, where L is the slant height. Okay, so the curved surface area of one cone is going to be pi by 2.25 by 5.03. Okay, but we have 14 of them, so let's multiply that by 14 as well. All right, and when I put that into my calculator, I'm going to get out 497.77 meters squared. Okay, so that is my curved surface area. The next question, saying 1 litre of polish will cover 12.25 meters squared. So let's have a look then. How many 12.25 meters do we have in 497.77? So we just divide that by that. And that gives me out 40.6342, and it goes on. Okay. So how many litres are we going to need? Well, we're going to need, correct this to the nearest litre, we're going to need 41 litres. Okay. Now, over here, we are going to look at a container of polish, contains 5 litres. Okay, so how many are we going to need? All right, well, we need 41. And we're going to divide that by 5 because each one has 5 litres. And that will give me 8.2. But because I need 8.2 cans, then I have to get 9 cans. Okay, so I have to get 9 cans. All right, the cost then, so 9 cans multiplied by the 110 Australian dollars, okay, gives me 990 Australian dollars. All right, and then $1 is 0.68, so we're going to multiply that by 0.68 euro, and that gives me my answer here of 673.20 euro, and that's for the nearest euro, so that is 673 euro. Okay. The next part then says the diagram isn't to scale, but it shows the net of the outer surface. So imagine they took scissors and they cut up the slant height and they laid the cone out in front of us, okay, on a flat 2D shape. So if you think about it, this here, this arc length, the length of the arc of the sector, is actually the bottom of the circle, okay? It's the circumference of the base of the cone that goes up like that. So if we find that the circumference of that circle that has a radius of 2.25, then that's going to be P, okay? So all we're doing is looking at 2 pi r. So that is 2 pi multiplied by 2.25, and that will give us 14.14 meters. Okay. Now the next one then says find the angle here in the center. Okay. And we know that our arc length of a sector from our log tables is going to be equal to theta, the angle, over 360 multiplied by 2 pi r. Okay. So 2 pi r. So we've already got that. We know that that's 14.14 from above. So let's plug in what we know. So 360. Okay. The radius now of my bigger circle here is 503. So we're going to multiply that by 2 pi by 5.03. And that's all going to be equal to 14.14. All right. Now, I want to get theta on its own. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the entire thing by 360 to get rid of that fraction. Okay. So we'll multiply this side by 360. And we're going to multiply this whole side by 360. Okay. So they cancel out. They're gone. And then we end up with 2 multiplied by 5.03 is so 10.06 pi, all multiplied by that theta, is going to be equal to 360 by 14.14, and that gives me 5090.4. Okay, now this is my unknown here, and if that was a 4x, all I would do is I would divide both sides by 4. Okay, this is no different. I'm going to divide both sides by the number that is in front of my unknown. So I'm going to divide both sides by 10.06 pi and 10.06 pi. Because even though it doesn't necessarily look like it because there's a symbol in there, that is just a number, 10.60 pi. 6 pi, if I put it into my calculator, where is my pi button now? Boom, there. That is just 31.6044221. Okay, so this cancels out. So I know that theta is going to be equal to, so I'm going 5090.4. We're going to divide that by 10.06 pi, and that gives me out 161.06606, and it goes on. And to the nearest degree, then that is 161 degrees. Okay, and that is the end of the test. Okay, so I want you to look back over the entire test. Note the things that need work when we come back in August, because in August we're going to be doing a revision of everything in fifth year before we hit into September first, where we start going on to new content, because we really need to have a grasp of all of the stuff that's contained within this in order to move on to the new content. If the summer assessment didn't go well, lads, don't worry about it and don't dwell on it, but you do have to put the work in to improve it, and it will improve if you put the work in. Okay, so thanks a million for watching this, appreciate it, and I will see you in August.